Daniels Midland has a beautiful ad campaign on during McNeil-Lehrer NewsHour, and they just came out with a new one where they claim they're going to end children begging in the street for food. Do you think they're going to succeed?
Well, you know, it's kind of like what they're going to try to do is make as much profit as they can. It might turn out by the sheerest accident that that'll help people, or it might turn out that it'll harm people, but it's kind of irrelevant, you know. I mean, what's relevant is that they maximize profit. And it's not because they're bad guys, it's because they have to. I mean, the system is designed so that you must be a villain. You know, if you're not, you're out of the system. Like if there's any degree of competition, there isn't much competition in the system, it's mostly oligopoly, but to the extent that there's any competition, you must be as vicious as you can, otherwise you're just not going to be in the game. Like, you know, if you got two auto companies, I mean, right now there's two airplanes, civilian aircraft is the biggest export, and there's two companies in the world, Airbus and Boeing. Both of them are offshoots of governments. But to the extent that they're private companies, they have to undercut each other. I mean, if one of them starts being nice to the workforce, or, you know, making planes with more seats, or, you know, allowing the air to circulate so people don't die of pneumonia or something, if they do that, they're just going out of business, you know, and the other guy will win. I mean, it's an institutional imperative that you be a gangster. You may have seen, there was a kind of shocking article on the front page of the New York Times a couple of months ago about I don't remember the details, it was something like this. There's some drug that's used for, or, you know, it's made by some big firm for removing facial hair. Now, it turns out that that drug can cure sleeping sickness, you know, which hundreds of millions of people are dying from. And the only reason it's being produced is for facial hair for rich people. And the article was very irate about this. You know, these bad CEOs, aren't they awful? Why don't they care about the kids dying from sleeping sickness? It's true that it's criminal, but it's not the criminality of the CEOs. I mean, they are behaving exactly as they must behave. They don't behave that way, they're not CEOs anymore. It's an institutional criminality, which we're supposed to be in favor of. You know, so you're taught in schools and colleges that this is the best thing, to have institutional structures which turn you into a murderous criminal. You gotta, you know, that's one of these things you have to recognize. It's not that the people doing it are bad guys. So Archer Daniel Midland, yeah, of course they're going to act in a criminal fashion, but if they don't, they're just no longer in business. The system is designed so that they act that way. There's a line around which you read in economics books where you quote Adam Smith as saying there's an invisible hand, which means if everybody pursues his own interest, it somehow turns out wonderful. I would advise you someday to look at what Adam Smith actually said. You know, I think you'd be interested. The phrase invisible hand appears once in Wealth of Nations, and it appears in a critique of capital mobility. That's somehow missing in the textbooks. He's talking about the fact that, he says, well, what about the possibility that you know, people with capital will invest somewhere else, some other country, and harm their own communities? He said, well, this probably isn't going to happen because the chances are that they'll feel more secure investing at home, and that will end up benefiting the community. And it says it sometimes happens, he says, that an invisible hand in which people are pursuing self-interest will actually help people. But that's part of his critique of capital mobility. You know, somehow that disappeared in the textbooks. I don't know why. But you check back in, it's around page 400 or so of book 1 of Wealth of Nations. You'll take a look at the index. It's easy to find because it only occurs once. You know? And, so it takes some real effort to misconstrue it in the way it's misconstrued. It's not the only case.